stuck in across the southern plains is my least favorite type of pattern. When you just have that chance at any time, storms popping up anywhere, it's very hard to forecast, and people get really frustrated with when the storms are popping up and where it's going to rain. So let's talk about what's going on. We've got this blocking high. It's hanging out. It's holding in place. It's really hard to kind of kick that out of there unless you have a vigorous kind of trough moving in, and we really don't have that for the early part of the week. So this is going to allow that door to stay open and that moisture to just flow across the central and the western states, picking up from the Gulf of Mexico. Now, eventually, we're going to have some of these disturbances filing through, and that helps to bring us that uplift, or that lift that we need to bubble up some of those storms. Here's the problem for places like Houston and really across much of Texas, that it's really hard to pinpoint where all these storms are going to bubble up. So Houston, Monday and Tuesday, you've got that chance for scattered storms. Will finally clear out by Wednesday, but that heat picks back up. We've got plenty of moisture to work with, so we have that possibility for some flash flooding across portions of the high southern plains here. You can see that outline for New Mexico, portions of Texas as well. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I wanted to show you. Look at the future radar. It's not like you're like, oh yeah, there's a specific low or there's a front and that's where the storms are going to be. It was literally like we just went to decide where the storms are going to be, because they're just everywhere. They're popping up. There's no rhyme or reason to it. So it makes it, as a planner, Jim, this type of weather is my least favorite, because I need to know when I am going to have to dodge the rain specifically.
I believe they call it abstract storms.
Yeah, that's what I was going for. Yeah, abstract.
That's
storms.
okay. All right, coming.
So much chocolate.
I knew that's where you were going.
Did you know that's where I was going?
I knew that's where
you could eat the.
Just start chomping on the boat.
Right. Is there a bunch of environmental things that could be getting on it? You know, like bird poop.
Sure.
And pollen. I don't want my chocolate with a side of pollen. But I get it. I get what they were doing.
Do you think they were rowing in the Strawberry River, so they had to make a boat out of chocolate?
Maybe. Now that would be nice if the river. June is National Great Outdoors Month. So the question of the day is, should I stay inside or should I go outside? I came to the revelation probably a couple weeks ago that I'm outdoorsy because I go outdoors every single day. So maybe you'll do a little bit of both. Maybe you'll be outdoors to go to work today, and then you'll stay inside. In Boston, you'll probably want to make sure you're inside because you've got below average temperatures and just frankly below average weather, lower 60s and rain. Meanwhile, in Tallahassee, it is going to be a warm one. Upper 80s, factor in a bit of humidity, and you know it's going to feel warmer than that with partly cloudy conditions. So Tallahassee winds that go outside there today. Staying in probably in Lake Charles, at least if you're dealing with some of those thick scattered thunderstorms. You don't want to be out and about in that. Meanwhile, in Lincoln, upper 80s, it's going to be a toasty one, mostly sunny. You'll be sweating it out if you're outside. You'll probably want to come in and get some AC at some point, but certainly better weather there. Now to Houston versus, say, Columbus. That's where we're going. Columbus, you want to be outside. A little bit of cloud cover this morning, but you'll have some sun later on. But Houston, you've got those scattered thunderstorms just popping up everywhere, so you probably won't be out and about in that. It's just one of those times across the southern plains, Jim, where you're going to have that messy setup. Actually, a lot of us are having that messy setup, whether in the northeast or across the plains.
Yeah, the southern plains.
Not so lucky, though, so that could, of course, impact your travel. Take a look at where we expect some weather-related airport delays possible wherever you're seeing the red or the yellow bubbles. Some storms bubbling up there across Texas, and then, of course, the northeast being impacted by that storm system. Maybe a few delays as you look out west as well. So you have that system that's lingering off the northeast coast. Just look at this. It's like a funnel of moisture circulating around the center of low pressure from Maine, diving down that 95 corridor into Boston. You got a little bit of wind with this. You've got the rain, the gloominess, the cooler than average temperatures, and a bit of coastal flooding certainly possible. We've got coastal flood statements up for some inundation possible. You've got those higher than normal astronomically influenced tides as well with the full moon that we had. So you're definitely going to see some of those low-lying flood-prone areas being impacted by that. A high surf advisory as well there along the coast, especially for places like the Cape. You can see these winds gusting 15-20 miles per hour, certainly possible. Those gusty winds sticking around into tomorrow as well. Now, those aren't the type of winds that are going to, keep your plane on the ground, but it is enough to blow you around a little bit, impact those high-profile vehicles some as well. And then you can see tomorrow we're sticking with some of those airport delays across some of our major hubs. Jordan.
Well, Europe is up.
Traveling is one of my most favorite things to do, and there are some great tips there. Well, coming up at noon today on Pattern, school's out and some bubbling up again, so you may need to break out that umbrella once again this afternoon. I think Atlanta should stay mostly dry. We're looking at temperatures in the mid-80s, but you've got a better chance for some of those storms, certainly along that I-10 corridor. You've got that moisture moving in along the Gulf. Hot, though. You might be praying for a storm in Little Rock. You're getting into the lower 90s, maybe a little bit of afternoon storm action will cool you off a little bit. We've got that risk of some isolated severe storms today for places like Asheville, Charlotte, down through Greenwood, maybe some gusty winds, maybe a little bit of hail with some of these storms that could get going. This is another one of those kind of messy patterns. Now, you can clearly see where we're getting this funnel of moisture up from the Gulf across the lower Mississippi River Valley, across the deep south as well. Those storms bubbling up here or there as we head through the evening, so certainly could have some of those around for anything you're doing, say after work or after school today. Heading into Tuesday, it's kind of diurnally driven as well, because you'll notice by Tuesday morning it's much quieter, but as we head through Tuesday afternoon, get some of that afternoon heating, you know how it goes, and then you see those storms bubbling up, I-10, I-20 getting in on that. Slightly better chance for cities like Atlanta to see a little bit more action tomorrow as well. Again, that risk for an isolated severe storm or two across portions of South Carolina from the coast all the way up into the higher elevations. Columbia, Orangeburg, down through Myrtle Beach are all included in that. Now, what's going to end up happening is this front is swinging southward. It's going to make it all the way down into North Georgia, across northern portions of Mississippi and Alabama. That's going to bring us some scattered storms as we head into the second part of the week, but that's also going to bring us a change in our temperatures. It's going to cool us down a bit. You see it here in Birmingham. We're going from the upper 80s and lower 90s to the lower 80s by Thursday with that chance for some rain around. So if you're not one of those people like me, Jim, who loves the heat, you might be really excited about this front.
And you know what's interesting is
I actually kind of hate. I hate when those dew points are like at 30 some or 40. I can't breathe.
So no dry heat for Felicia.
Definitely at least light jacket weather. Probably for me, I'd say sweater and then windbreaker. Probably have some earmuffs on. I mean, 51 and a breeze. You don't want any of it. Okay, so I was curious about some of these temperatures because, you know, 70's not so bad. I was like, let's see how cool it has been, because this has been sticking around a little while. You can see our dip in the jet stream, allowing that cooler air to plunge even down into the mid-Atlantic. So I looked up Providence because, you know, today, 76 in New York, that's actually really comfortable. It was in the mid-70s or the mid-50s in Providence, Rhode Island yesterday. That's about 20 degrees below average. Boston, you're only in the lower 60s today. Binghamton, lower 70s. Lower 70s, I think, is really doable. It's when you're starting to get into the lower 60s, the wind, the cloud cover, the rain, that it's really not pleasant. By tomorrow, we see those temperatures rebound a little bit for places like Boston, upper 70s in NYC. Meanwhile, a bit farther south into D.C., we're looking at temperatures in the mid-80s. But it's that system that Jim was just talking about. You can see that kind of steady rotation of showers and cloud cover around that center of low pressure that's keeping us just dreary and gloomy and with temperatures below average. 10 to 20 degrees below average, especially as you look across portions of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, all getting into that. Here's what we're looking at in terms of highs. 60s there in Burlington, lower 60s, upper 60s in Binghamton, Buffalo, a pleasant 72 for you. So at least you guys are seeing those 70s there. In Boston, here's your average line running through, and you'll notice those temperatures bobbling slightly above average as we head through Tuesday, but then taking that dip right back down. At least Wednesday looks a little bit drier. Thursday and Friday still looks pretty rainy there in Boston. Burlington, you're staying below average and pretty rainy as well. But of course, it is also that time of year where you see the sunshine playing more of a role. You get into your car, right, and it might feel comfortable outside, but you get in your car and it's feeling really hot because those cars can heat up quickly. Even across the northeast in places like Syracuse, where your high is 76 degrees today, after just 10 minutes, we're at 95 degrees. That's why we just keep reminding you to make sure you check that back seat. I know we all have really busy mornings sometimes. You're rushing around and it can be easy to forget, but it can become very deadly and dangerous, as we've already seen too many times this year. If you forget the kids in the back of the car, you don't want to leave your pets in there either, even if you think I'm just running in for a second. Now, meanwhile, for a place like Chicago, when you're in the lower 80s today, it's already feeling a little toasty outside, but just after 10 minutes in your car, you get that radiation going on. It's trapped inside your car, and it's 102 degrees after just 10 minutes and 117 degrees after 30 minutes. Now, we are pretty warm in Chicago at 83 degrees today, but that is going to change eventually, Jordan. We're going to see this front move through and it's going to drop those temperatures, but it's not going to take away the fact that those cars can heat up really quickly and become dangerous very quickly as well.
So true. And even as it's
stressing me out. It's also across the middle parts of the country. There's a lot of disorganization going on in this weather pattern that we've got going on right now, in large part due to the fact that we're having this high sticking around and we really don't have anything kicking it out anytime soon. You're really going to have to wait for quite some time before we can get a big shift in this pattern. So that high is hanging out, and that's opening the door to all of this moisture being kind of vacuumed up across central and western states as we head through this week. Now, we are going to have some impulses that move through and help to kind of trigger some of those storms. We've got this slow moving upper low that's going to move eventually into the Four Corners region as we head through this week, and that is going to help to bring that chance for some of those storms bubbling up here or there. Again, very disorganized. Summer storms for Houston, and we know this is what we typically expect. You head into the afternoon, you get that daytime heating, and those storms begin to bubble up. By Wednesday, a mix of sun and clouds, upper 80s. It does look like Wednesday will be your slightly drier day. Now, with all of this moisture that we have going on across this region, any of these storms could put down some hefty amounts of rain. So you've got that possibility for some flash flooding up across portions of New Mexico into Texas as well. But we're going to stretch that slight risk for that, for a little bit of flash flooding all the way to the Gulf coastal plain. Let's take a look at the future radar throughout today. This is what I'm talking about, guys. It's not like you've got a strict front moving through and you can see that line of storms. It's just like popcorn storms everywhere. It's very messy this afternoon, and by the time we get into overnight tonight, early Tuesday, that kind of quiets down a little bit, as is typically the pattern. And then again Tuesday, that chance for storms again. Jordan.
well, time now.
It's just too dry.
It's too dry. I need some moisture in my dew point temperature. I need it to be at least 62
Yeah, 60,
to thrive.
60s, I like 60. I agree with you.
I'm really thriving at 68. Let's talk about where I would not be thriving. Yeah, 68. The dew point, everything is balmy. Life is good. You're probably somewhere tropical.
Exactly.
Boston, I would not be thriving there this morning. You're sitting at 51 degrees, but you've got that northerly wind that's making it feel more like the upper 40s. You got the light rain, you've got the mist, the fog. It's no fun. The 95 corridor stuck in that. You can see that circulation around that system rotating in through Maine as well. Here's what you can expect for places like Philly today. It's going to be a bit cloudy at times, breezy as well, but your high is going to be near 80, which is close to average for Philly. To New York, you've got that chance for some coastal flooding. Certainly, the clouds are going to stick around for a little while, but your temperatures are nice and mild. Heading a bit farther north to Boston, we were just talking about this. Periods of rain, highs in the 60s, so you are going to have those below average temperatures, and you could certainly see a few travel delays as well. Now, with these winds coming on shore in some places, you've got that possibility for some coastal flooding. We've got high surf advisories up around the Cape. You're going to have some of those issues, those winds staying a bit elevated even as we head into tomorrow. Jordan.
Well, every year,
I'm handing that over to you guys. guys as well. You got plans and you want to like make sure they're only an hour long. You look at the forecast and you're like, okay, when's the rain going to start? I'll make those plans an hour before that rain starts so I have an automatic out. Today, you've got that possibility for storms bubbling up all along that I-10 corridor with that influx of Gulf moisture. You might be really excited about an afternoon thunderstorm in Little Rock to cool you off a little bit. Jacksonville and Atlanta staying dry today. Meanwhile, where we have that risk for some storms to get just a little bit feisty, maybe some gusty winds, maybe a bit of hail, that's going to be across portions of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Asheville down through Winsboro, Greensboro, you're all included in that. Charlotte, you as well will get some of that daytime heating to get those storms to bubble up as we head through the second part of the day. Here's 3 o'clock. You can see our smattering of storms across the lower Mississippi River Valley. We're seeing those storms popping up across Mississippi and Alabama. Into the evening, that's where you get some of those storms up across the higher elevations of the Carolinas and then rolling down toward the coast. Now, you'll notice there's a kind of a daytime, nighttime pattern to this. It's the afternoon where we see them bubbling up. Overnight and into Tuesday morning, things remain fairly quiet. We get that afternoon heating once again by Tuesday during the afternoon and evening, and you've got those storms bubbling up. We've got plenty of moisture to work with, so some of them could put down some heavy rain, enough to really flick on those windshield wipers as you're driving home from work today or tomorrow. Now, tomorrow, this is our risk of severe storms across much of South Carolina, from the mountains all the way to the coast, Charleston, Myrtle Beach included in that. And then as we look through the mid to later part of the week, we've got a front that's going to be swinging south, and that is going to bring us that chance for some slightly cooler temperatures. But, Jim, it's also going to bring some of us the chance for a few storms.
I hope so.
And grow things and keep them alive. Because I'm not great at that.
And I'm even more painfully good at that.
Every time I almost kill a plant, I'm like, hey, Molly, could you foster my plant back to life, please?
That's right.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so let's talk temperatures across the Northeast because, you know, as Jim was mentioning, a lot of people kind of consider that Memorial Day weekend the kickoff to summer. And if you're in Boston this morning, you're like, it does not feel like summer, okay? We've got a dip in the jet stream. We really don't have this pattern budging a whole lot, so you're not seeing any huge changes as we head through the next several days. 52 in Boston right now, but I was like, I wonder what it feels like with that northerly wind and that fog, mist, light rain that you've got going on this morning. What feels like the upper 40s there in Beantown. So not feeling too summer-like at all. Bangor, you're looking at 55 for your high today. D.C., pleasant for you, lower 80s. Meanwhile, NYC, mid-70s, which is just a tiny bit below average. The temperatures warm a bit more. Boston, you'll actually make it into the 70s tomorrow, upper 70s for NYC. So even though the temperatures aren't that far below average for a lot of these places, they're still really comfortable. Now, the setup that we've got going on with this system hanging off the coast of New England, that circulation around it just keeps filtering in more clouds and more rain and a little bit of a breeze as well. So it just remains kind of dreary. You know, when you've got that cloud cover, you've got the setup like we have, it keeps it a bit cooler. So we're definitely looking at temperatures well below average, 10 to 20 degrees below average across portions of New England. As we head into Wednesday, you can see those temperatures back down in the 60s. So we're playing a little bit of a bobbling type of effect throughout the next few days. For instance, in Boston today, you're only in the lower 60s. That's well below average. By Tuesday, we're just a bit above average in the mid 70s, but the rain is sticking around. If you have anything you need to do outdoors this week, maybe you couldn't grab the groceries this weekend, so you need to grab them on Wednesday, that's going to be your best day out of the next 5 to do that, because you're not going to be dodging the rain as much as every single other day of the week. It'll be one of those days on Wednesday when you finally get some sun to come out that it's like, oh, what is this? To Burlington, you can see the temperatures dip down into the 60s and stay that way starting Wednesday through the rest of the week, and that rain starts to pick up even a bit more as we head into Tuesday. Now, when we get to this time of year, it is one of those time of years where even if it's cool outside, that solar radiation that we have happening can certainly help it to feel a lot warmer and even a lot hotter inside of your car. So for a city like Syracuse, where it's 76 degrees today, feeling incredibly pleasant outside, right? But you know how it is when you get in your car, you've been at work all day and you're like, oh, geez, it's so hot in here. I got to roll the windows down, let all that heat out. Well, after just 10 minutes, it's 95 degrees in your car in Syracuse. And that's why we remind you over and over again, don't leave the kids in the car. Even if you think you're just going to run in for 10 minutes, look how fast your car can heat up. That's 95 degrees. Now, For a place like Chicago today, where it's going to be in the lower 80s, it's 102 degrees inside of your car after just 10 minutes, and after 30 minutes, 117 degrees. So it's completely unsafe to leave the kids or the pets in the car. And I know people, they say, well, how could you ever forget? I could never forget. But I would guarantee almost everyone, and we've seen already too many this year, that the child car deaths, they all probably thought the same thing, Jordan. How could you possibly forget? But that's why I keep reminding you.
It's terrible. And we hate reporting it.
Organized frontal storm system. I love it when you know the front is coming. You can time out your day. This pattern that we've got going on across the plains, the middle portions of the country, a little bit messier. Here's what's happening. We just can't get this high out of the way. When you've got this high kind of blocking everything, you really need something a little bit more vigorous. You need a better, stronger trough to knock this out of the way, and we're not getting any of that. So we're kind of stuck in this. Opens the door to that Gulf moisture. It's like a little atmospheric vacuum, pulling up all that moisture across the plains, especially taking aim across the southern plains over the next several days. Now, we are going to have this disturbance that's going to kind of meander its way into the Four Corners region. That brings some of our lift that helps get those storms going across this area. Now, for Houston, you've got that chance for storms this afternoon, tomorrow afternoon as well. Wednesday looks just a bit drier, but anytime you got 89 and that flow off the Gulf, I'd say I wouldn't completely rule out an isolated pop-up shower or two. Now, we've got that chance for a bit of flash flooding from the Gulf coastal plain all the way up into portions of New Mexico, the Texas Panhandle, getting in on that as well. And that's because we've had quite a bit of rain action, and we're going to add in all of this moisture and these storms bubbling up across these regions, especially across some of the higher elevations there in New Mexico. This is what I'm talking about, it being disorganized, though. You can see that there is no rhyme or reason to where these storms are bubbling up this afternoon. You just get that daytime heating, and you've got that chance for heavy rain and some storms. Dies off overnight, and then into Tuesday morning fairly quiet, and we see that bubbling right back up as we head through Tuesday afternoon. Jordan.
All right, well, it is time now.
All right, let's take a look ahead in the T-Mobile coast-to-coast forecast and give you a peek at temperatures in your area as you plan your travel for the week ahead. Some of us are going to be dodging some storms. Others are going to be sweating it out with above average temperatures for places like, say, Grand Forks, where you're hitting the lower 90s. We're going to be in the upper 60s for a place like Denver today, with that chance for a few scattered storms. By tomorrow, you'll notice no specific area seeing the majority of the storms, but you will have that influx of moisture across the central portions of the U.S. and some storms bubbling up across Miami. Beautiful day by Wednesday in Kansas City, but a bit above average with those temperatures in the upper 80s. We will see that chance for storms continuing across the northern Rockies, and above average temperatures for places like Grand Forks, New York. You're staying below average in the temperature department, and the lower 70s for Thursday. By Friday, we're still seeing some of those temperatures a little bit cooler than average across New England, but for a city like Atlanta, sunny and in the mid 80s. Have weather like this that we have across New England, I'm like, sheesh, yeah, that's not my type of June weather. But I would say, I'd be willing to guess, even if you are a stone cold Bostonian, this isn't your kind of June weather either. When it feels like the upper 40s, you can see we've got that rotation around that center of low pressure really just directing that moisture, bringing us some northerly winds down along portions of that 95 corridor. For Philly today, it's actually going to be pretty pleasant temperature-wise. Highs near 80s. It's going to be a little bit breezy. You are going to have some clouds around, but overall, not a terrible day. Looking at NYC, temperatures are close to average there. Now, we do have that possibility for some coastal flooding just because of those winds, so keep that in mind. Those flood-prone areas there along the water, you might be seeing that today. And to Boston, your highs are going to stay below average, on and off rain. And with the breeze and everything we've got going on, you might see some delays. We could have some coastal flooding around this region as well. You can see the winds. They are going to be gusty for the coastal areas. That's lending itself to some of that coastal flooding. We also have a high surf advisory for portions of the region across the Northeast, and those winds stay elevated even as we head through Tuesday. In terms of delays today, we could see scattered delays across the country. Jordan.
Well, Europe.
Makes me want to go on vacation. Well, coming up at noon on Pattern today, school same pattern where we'll get some of that afternoon, daytime heating and pop up those storms. They'll quiet down as we head into the nighttime hours, and then another round on Tuesday, where it's going to be fairly quiet. Raleigh down through Atlanta, Jacksonville today, but along that I-10, even portions of I-20, that chance for some storms. Little Rock headed for the lower 90s, and it is going to be a humid one as well. You're going to be feeling it there in Little Rock. We've got that chance for a few severe storms today, really from the higher elevations from the Piedmont, stretching through much of the Carolinas. Charlotte, Asheville getting in on that. Watch what happens as we move through the day today. So fairly quiet to start off. If you have anything you need to do outdoors, the early part of the day is your best bet. By this afternoon, you've got that daytime heating. You got those storms beginning to bubble up. It's like someone turned on the almost said the flashlight, but that was not the word I was looking for. What word am I looking for? What is it when, oh, the light switch. That's where I was going. It's like someone flicked the light switch. I really could not think of it. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Hi, welcome into America's Morning Headquarters.
Hey,
we can continue.
right.
Hey, this afternoon, those storms bubbling up. Some of those are going to put down some heavy rain, maybe some lightning and thunder with those as well. Quieting overnight and into Tuesday morning, and then a second round Tuesday afternoon. Guys, I'm sad we've only got a couple minutes left because now I'm awake and ready.
Oh,